Whew. So how you doing, Dave? How's your quarantine
It's
experience
been
going?
it's been weird, like because I'm still working from the office because I can't really do my job remotely. It's just the nature of the work.
Oh, geez.
So yeah, that's been fun.
Well,
Yeah.
I hope that at least you're getting like the right. They're disinfecting everything. Everybody's keeping safe.
Yeah, like they're taking precautions and so on and so forth, but like still doesn't feel great, but that's the hand I got dealt. So
Yeah.
but I at least still have a job, so that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I
There's
do.
a lot of people in way worse spots than me, so
Yeah, I definitely do. I time events and I'm a musician, so all of that is right out the window for this month and
yeah.
next. So
Yeah, my brother's a wedding photographer. So he had like I don't
holy,
know, like 80 some odd weddings that he had scheduled over the next few months, just like postponed indefinitely.
holy
So
smokes.
yeah, so it's tough, but
Yeah.
strange times, man.
Yeah, yeah, you said it.
Strange times.
You definitely said it. All right. Well, the I've done two of these so far.
Sweet.
I haven't put out the one with Keenan yet, but I did one with Mark Tyner, and I did one with Keenan, and it's been sort of evolving over time because that's how things go.
Yeah, of course.
you know, but basically the gist of my idea was that I wanted to get interviews with people that are players that I really admire that played really interesting decks. And I think that a good way to pick your brain on just like the game in general is to hone in on something specific. And we've you and I have already had a long discussion about the your one match, right, with Barrett Bryant while you played Cypher Joe.
Yeah.
But it was, I think that was a really unique meta decision, right, to play that character at that specific event. Even though I remember you saying that you would still be playing it even if it wasn't the case, but because of how great he was into things like Liu Kang and
Hmm.
Cassie Cage and things like that, I think it's a nice storyline. I think it's a nice place to look into. So what drew you to the deck to begin with, right? Good is not like a very heavily played symbol. And Sniper
Yeah,
Joe,
especially at that point. I guess like I've traditionally played seven hand size characters, with a few notable exceptions here and there through like my UFS career, if you want to call it that.
sure.
But I liked the person who turned me on to the character actually was Alex Marco here locally in Atlanta. He was playing him for a while with kind of a similar um, backbone to the list, at least initially. And I kind of took it and ran with it, and just kept refining it over the course of the season. And like with where he was in the meta and where the meta was at that point, outside of like you had such a huge Liu Kang population, and I'm trying to think of the other decks that were like super popular at that point too. Um, like he was definitely the big front runner.
Yeah, it was Liu Kang was huge. Quan Chi, I guess, in the lead up to the event before he got banned,
Yeah, yeah.
was
And
massive.
this deck had an
Goro.
okay matchup with Quan. Like it wasn't amazing, but it was like a 50-50, which against that deck, that's about as good as you can hope for. So
Yeah, I mean, I think against the original Quan Chi, it was basically unwinnable unless you could kill him at once. Like you had to kill him with
yeah,
one attack, or
yeah,
else
you
it
had to
was.
kill him either really quickly before he got too many resources in his bin to start farming out, or like,
Yeah,
yeah, it was not a fun. Like it was winnable, but it was not like good.
right, right, yeah.
um, and then like what else kind of emerged at that point? You had like Jackie Briggs was pretty popular. Pretty much like a lot of the MK stuff uh, was just running around all over the place.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. I mean, like Scorpion was massive at that event. I think there were a couple Spike ones, of course.
mhm.
Uh,
Yeah,
uh, there was one Faye, some idiot Faye player.
yeah. Some scrub
Yeah.
just couldn't let that character go. There's a funny story with this character, and how she interacts with Sniper Joe too. So
Yes,
yeah,
yeah,
that's a matchup you have to pair around. So we'll get to that later.
yeah. Um,
Um,
So did you have any other decks that were kind of competing with Sniper Joe at the time, or are you the kind of guy that goes in
God, I'm
this is
trying to
my deck?
remember. So a lot of times for me personally, like I don't have the time that I used to just like aggressively test a ton of stuff.
Sure.
Um, like the Atlanta play group is still pretty active, and we try to get together like once or twice a month for locals and stuff like that. But as far as like individual sit down and just like deck build for hours and that kind of thing, like I just don't have the time, right?
Right.
So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll find something that seems to work pretty well, and then I'll just keep working on it.
Right.
And with the Joe deck, like I said, it really started as Marco's deck, and he wound up playing some other stuff instead of it as like the character got more support, and so I just took it and ran with it. Um, but there were like a few interactions that I keyed on that I thought would be positioned pretty well within the meta, especially in like a teams format. Um, and those wound up actually playing out pretty well. Even, like the ability, and I don't know, I don't think it's as good as it used to be, just because kind of power creep and just stuff gets phased in and out. But Gateway Shuffle is a card that's really weird. And
I'll say,
yeah, yeah. And at the time, there were really only a couple of characters that could play it like exceptionally well. Faye was one of them for sure.
sure.
Just because you rig her nonsense with it. And other than that, you really had to be a 7-hander to kind of maximize it.
With
And
Shadow Inheritance, I think.
yeah, and that was the interaction, right? So you had this cool little like defensive package with Evening with Gren, Gateway Shuffle, and Shadow Inheritance, which did double duty in like not getting completely blown out by Liu Kang,
Right.
just let you be able to block. And Gateway Shuffle lets you do these tricky plays where you can, stuff a shuffle in your card pool defensively, take 5 less damage from something. Ready Joe if you took like 1 or 2 after blocking like the first attack your opponent played. So it just like it really extended your defense, and then you could just turn around and kill people with it.
Right. Yeah, and it was also
So
offensive, right?
yeah. So that card, like that interaction with Sniper Joe and like taking an ability that normally, and I'm talking about as defensive enhanced, the effective like -5 speed, -3 speed, whatever you want to call
Right.
it. Usually, once you use that, your opponent like gets, their eyes turn red and they're like, oh, well, he's vulnerable now. Like I can just punch him in the face really hard because I have a free +2 speed on my attack because of Joe's static. And he's going to have to struggle to block it. And then he gets to re-ready, sure, but I might have hit him for like 12 or something like that, or with something kind of meaty. And Gateway Shuffle just mitigated that penalty on defense. Like I'd say like 80% of the time that I was playing that card, unless I was killing my opponent right then, was using the defensive ability. And yeah. But a lot of the stuff in the list, looking back at it now, was very much a reaction of what was in the meta at the time, right? And that's why this deck did well in teams.
I mean, that's a team's list in general, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
Need somebody to be the hinge on the team that you can throw at what you know is going to be on almost every team, right?
Yeah, and this deck was our Liu Kang killer. Right. And I think I only lost to 1 Liu Kang through the whole tournament. And I think that was Scott Sundman in like the last round of Swiss. I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was Scott's build. And he was doing some trickier stuff that a couple other lists they didn't dig as deep into the tech, and he did, and it wound up working out for him. But other than that, I didn't drop a set to Liu Kang like that whole tournament.
Right. I mean, just by the nature of the character. I mean, running Shogans, like you said, Gateway Shuffles, 4 stop. I mean,
yeah, that was the other thing too. Like being able to basically auto pass a stop and treat your stops like they're +0 mids instead of +3s, just on the back of what your character can do, was really strong.
Yeah, well,
like that just buys you turns. And yeah, that was, again, you just jam 4 stop 4 gateway in the deck and like build a defensive shell around it. It was really nice. So
Yeah, I would definitely describe it as a control deck, even though it has the explosive, tools necessary to execute somebody. With effective 2 speed on every one of your attacks. I mean, missile
Mhm.
launcher being a 9 low 6 with powerful 4 on it,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. There's worse things.
Yeah, there's definitely worse things.
Yeah, exactly.
But I love the Takeda package stuff in there. I mean, sure, Khan. I remember in the one match I saw, was doing super duty.
No, that card's amazing. It's
Yeah,
still really good.
yeah.
Um,
It's such a role player. I think
mhm.
it fills a lot of gaps. And makes
Yeah,
your strings much better, especially when you have 6 checks, which you had
yeah.
very nice connections
Which
to.
there's enough of them in the deck that you can
Yeah.
cheat a little bit.
Right, and like the only offensive foundation you really had there. I mean, Shadow Inheritance kind of, if you
Yeah,
got
if you
to enough
squint
great,
really
it
hard
gives
at
you.
it, but
But really, what it was one with nature, right? And
Mhm.
that's just going harder on the Sniper Joe
Yeah,
shtick. But everything else is like, I want to live. I'm going to live in this format. Which in retrospect, like I thought about it a bit about why my Fade did well at the event, and
Mhm.
and also why Sniper Joe did was because they were all string decks, right? Everybody was running tons of strings of attacks, and it wasn't like our meta right now where it's like poke attack, whatever, and then if you have your dunk, right?
Yeah,
It wasn't as dunky, I think, at the time. So things like
definitely not. No.
Whatban's Leaf Shield was crazy good at the time. It would just end people's turns. And having something like Shogun to stop the string from happening against things like Liu Kang,
Mhm.
against like who else in that format needed to dig into their, I mean, multiple decks, right? I'm gonna hate Shogun.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
it's
Multiples were a big one.
And Gateway Shuffle gets better because of that too, because a string
Yeah.
deck isn't pumping 9 damage attacks or 20
No,
damage
it's
attacks.
punching it's
Yeah,
pumping out like a bunch of like 5 to 7 damage
exactly.
stuff.
So that's
Uh,
an effective block. It's an auto
right.
block on a 2+ progressive difficulty. So
Yeah.
I think it was extraordinarily well positioned because of the way that the cards in the meta environment were at that time. And from looking at it, I don't even need to ask you. This is obviously a conscious decision, right? You saw that was going to be the thing, and you prepared for that, and it
Mhm.
worked out, which is awesome. That's great. That's why we're here, right? That's why we're here.
Yeah,
That's why
yeah,
we have. That's
for
why we have
sure.
blood, sweat, and beers.
Exactly.
Um, so we've talked a little bit about the static and his enhance, but what does it
Sure.
do that's special? What's special about it?
So the interesting thing about him and how this deck works on offense basically is like he reads as a static +2 speed, but it's really not, right? Because he's not affected by speed resets, which is pretty big, and he's not affected by like stuff that would cancel speed boosts either.
Right.
So you have this double whammy of like one with nature is basically doing the same thing. It's just another version of his static that you get a little bit of damage on top of. Um, but sometimes he just created dead cards in your opponent's staging area by accident. Um, like if they've got something that's like, well, I can reduce this speed back to printed, right? Something like that. Joe's like, I don't care.
Yeah,
You can
I
do
didn't
that
touch
all
it.
day. Like you're still having to deal with the more difficult block mod, that kind of thing. And he puts this weird mental tax on people too, where especially if you've never played against the character before, like making your math step go that one extra layer deep is just it's this kind of subtle little advantage. Um, but that's really the big thing, right? His offense once it got rolling, and you're right, like it's not a deck that usually is going to burst you out on
Mhm.
turn 2 or turn 3 even. Like you can do it.
It has the
Sometimes the
capacity
situation
to.
will come up. Yeah, like it's like, oh cool, I ripped like missile launcher Shira Yukon and I have a 6 in my discard pile, like, and I ripped into another launcher, like, okay, cool, let's just go. But most of the time you're playing for a bit of a longer game.
Right.
And you're right, like the vast majority of the deck is the defensive tool to stay alive long enough to leverage like +4 speed on everything with one with nature strings, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, plus 2 more for each one. I mean, that was
Yeah.
the crux of my deck at the same tournament. You know, I just wanted to make one sand grenade for 50 and then one with nature until you couldn't block it anymore.
Right.
You can't.
Yeah, exactly.
And at that time there was no nightmare terrors, so there was no.
Yeah, there's no like super cheaty way around it or anything like that. So
yeah, so the power of Omen Nature is definitely I think understated, and it's really funny how great that card is for Shane's or I'll say Brandon Bueno's, because I know Shane keeps saying that it was Brandon Bueno that made that list. Tim Keefe 2 deck, like
yeah,
Tim Keefe has no stats. It's just
really, really good in any 7-hander, honestly, that is running on those symbols. The issue is like there's a handful of 7-handers on those symbols that are good, and there's a lot of ones that are garbage. But like,
right.
But yeah, that like in a world where a lot of the stuff from Platinum has kind of been pushed by the wayside, I still think that card's got legs. I still think it's good.
Yeah, so. Woman Nature's. I think it's a silent killer. You know.
Yeah, that card's awesome.
Very, very cool card. So were there any particularly fun or interesting combos that you pulled off? Like, we all dream of the moment where like you see something that you didn't plan for, right? Like
just like weird lines of play, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the obvious ones like, you know, stacking stuff with Shiro Yukon and then drawing it with New Empress, that sort of thing. I'm just looking through the deck right now. So one of the subtle things in the deck that you get to do, and it's a little bit different now because Deadlock's a little more prolific than it was. Like, it's just on more symbols. A bunch of people would ask me why I played Built for Speed, especially at a 2 of, and it's so you can weave yourself in and out of Deadlock.
Right.
And like replace garbage foundations you don't need anymore with relevant stuff if the game gets to like a stalemate point, which that would happen a lot of times here because you're such a good defensive deck. Like, once you're sitting at that 10 foundation, you know, threshold, you might not really want to like, okay, I can't really play another foundation without risking like getting blown out by some busted Deadlock thing.
Right.
But I can blow a foundation up, and I can replace it with something better.
Right. Warrior Descendant probably fills a similar purpose.
Yeah.
Even if you're getting -1 damage or +1 damage, it's just curating your stage.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You're just getting your card quality increased.
Yeah, I think if you're playing any form of control deck, you need to be able to have that sort of tool.
I would totally agree. Yeah.
The especially get like things like missile launcher. The dangerous place is like between 10 and 12 to 13. Past that point, it's like it's whatever. But if you play into somebody who's got like double face of a monster out, or they're playing multiple shotguns, then you're
a bunch of scary nonsense.
You do need that. And it's an important. You know, I had Built for Speed in my deck for the exact same reason.
Yep.
Off of a different symbol, of course. But
I definitely missed that card. So.
it's a neat little card.
Yeah, it's good. I'm trying to think of other cool, like, weird combos. I mean, the Shadow Inheritance block stuff is pretty well established at this point. Again, the like just play gateway shuffles just to put cards in your pool, so your Shadow Inheritance block boost gets juiced up for like late in a chain sort of thing. That's probably the biggest one. That's the biggest like trick of the deck, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a neat trick.
It's a pretty good trick. Yeah.
And you don't really need that many tricks when you're running X copies of Missile Launcher and, you know, Shurikens and Nutcrackers.
Yeah.
Like that's a dead Liu Kang, if you ask me.
Yeah, that was kind of the deal, right? Like, you've got enough stun in the deck to kind of push a little bit early, and your base speeds are high enough that once you tack Sniper Joe on top of them, you tax their defenses if they want to commit to blocking stuff, and then you just like find ways to blow them out.
So one interesting thing I wanted to ask you about was preparing for like a team's event with your team.
Sure.
Like you Ben Shoemaker, and you know you had Drew Maffei. At one point, was it Drew Maffei?
Yep.
And then now you're with you just played with Miles, but your typical third is
usually we're playing with
Birch,
Phil
right?
Birch. Yeah.
But you guys are, I would describe as prolific in playing teams.
We've had a good run. Yeah,
you've had very good runs just in general. And I have not. I mean, I play. You know, I think that we've come close a few times to topic, but I've never topped at a teams event. And I don't know what that is. So I'd like to pick your brain
Yeah,
about
sure.
preparing for it, and give me like if I give a mock scenario at the time, right? What would you pick?
So
Preparation.
like this, like when me, Ben, and Miles teamed, we didn't really plan out enough, not enough. We just kind of like took decks that we felt comfortable playing and said, all right, like life has dictated we don't get to grind out reps together, which sucks, and we just really didn't get to communicate a ton.
Right.
And we still did okay. I played, or not played awful. I got destroyed through teams this past Worlds, but prior to that, I went completely undefeated with Tournelouse at nationals through teams, and we made it to like top 4, I think.
Yeah.
And we've like when it's been me, Ben, and Phil, we haven't missed a top cuts since like 2017 or 2016, I think, something like that. I don't know. So yeah, we've had a really good run. But if you're talking more about like approach, there's a few ways to look at it. What the three of us usually do is we'll just find 2 really strong decks that just put questions on the table that the other team just has to answer.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll try to have a third deck that's kind of a curveball. And with 2018 Nationals, the Joe deck was definitely our curveball. Ben was playing. What was Ben playing? God, I don't remember. Phil was playing.
Vega,
no,
right?
Ben was playing Liu Kang. Phil was playing Vega.
Right.
And then I was playing the Sniper Joe deck. Yeah, Phil was playing like Desperation Vega, which was a really, really good defensive evil deck that could like just melt you in like 3 or 4 attacks, which at that point in time was really good.
I mean, that's big. That's big for that.
Yeah,
type, of course,
and we had Ben on Quan Chi up until like the minute he got banned, which was a bummer. So he kind of had a last minute audible into Liu Kang, and I'd been working on that Sniper Joe deck for like months at that point.
Right.
I'd played it at just about every locals that I went to, so on and so forth. So I knew the deck like the back of my hand. And I knew its bad matchups. I knew its good matchups, so on and so forth.
So if you were to recommend an adjustment for me, right? Typically when I go to an event, like I won't recommend decks for my teammates to make, right? Because people, at least locally, people kind of have their like baby that they'll.
Yeah, of course.
And like I've never been the guy to be like, no, we really need Jackie Briggs on my team, or we really need King on our team, right? Like at that Nats, we had like Faye Kotal Khan and I don't remember Goose is playing. And like we did okay. Like recently I played with Alex Marco and I played with Kevin Brobert, who are 2 incredible players. And both
those guys really good.
Yeah, we went through a gauntlet. I mean, we played like every Legendary Wolf Games team at the tournament. We played you guys, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. We never got to play before that either. You and I, and we had like a cool match, I think. But
yeah, we did.
So. But every game was like insane to me. Like
like you didn't have any like soft teams that you played into at all. It's just like gauntlet full of killers. Yeah. That's tough.
I think we came really close to the end. You know, like I played into Tyner in the very last round, and we were 1-1 before Alex and Kevin lost their matches. But like if either one of them won, I think I could have taken the Gil but I'm rambling at this point. It doesn't matter. There's no context in the question. I'm going to shut up.
That's fine.
What's important about it is that you would probably recommend that instead of being like play your baby, we need to have 2 extremely good, very, very flexible characters that are going to make your opponent, because you're never going to win every die roll, right? You're never going to get all matchups, right? And I have a tendency to pick into bad matchups for myself, so that I can guarantee better matchups for my other.
So you dive on the grenade, like
So
we pair the complete opposite most of the time. Like most of the time, unless the other, like if we win a die roll, most of the time we're going to take a free win, right?
Okay.
Like if we have a match that we feel really good about, then we'll just take it, right? And we'll figure it out on the back end. some of that's just having confidence in your team and in your team's decks that like they're going to be able to play their way out of like a 40-60 matchup, that kind of thing. Right. And I have a lot of faith in Ben, and I have a lot of faith in Phil, and I had a lot of faith in Miles too. That's not to take anything away from him.
Oh, no, definitely.
Like I said, I was the one that was too heavy to put in the backpack and carry to top cuts this past year. But usually I would say probably like 8 times out of 10, if we win the die roll, we're going to take a strong matchup and force the other team to make the decision on the other two.
I mean, these are important distinctions because I was literally doing the opposite.
Yeah, and the way we look at it, right, is like most decks in UFS, if you have a relatively even or even a somewhat poor matchup, right, like there's very few decks that are like, I just get completely blown out by this deck no matter what, even if I win the die roll and like run hot and like I got a 5 build on 1 or something like that and I somehow still lose. Like that happens on occasion, but most of the time, if you're at a competitive tournament and you've put the time in and you have confidence enough in that deck to bring it to teams, you feel pretty good about it into most everything, right? So we value like deck flexibility a lot. Sometimes it's again, it's also just having that curveball deck, right? Like that Joe deck was a curveball to people because they see that character and they're like, well, I can see what he does, but I don't really know what this dude's game plan is at all. Like, I don't know what symbol he's on. I don't know. Like, there's no like accepted good build at that point of that character, right? So that made the pairing process harder for the other team too, a lot of the time. So you can kind of like sneak stuff by other teams when you do that too. But as going back to the pairing thing, like, yeah, I would say 8 to 9 times out of 10, unless there's something that's just like I straight up cannot beat that deck, period. Right? Like that is a horrifically bad matchup. And if they, we either need to pair me around that so I can get a win, or we just need to accept the fact that they're going to get that on their second pair, and we need to take our strongest matchup like off the rip and just hope I can squeak a win out. And I'm just using me as the example there. I hope that provides like a somewhat answer to the question.
No, that's a great answer. I appreciate that, and I'm sure tons of people are gonna love to hear that as well. I mean, especially because of how successful you guys have been, and it's real clear why you guys did so well at that specific nationals in general, because every team had a Liu Kang. I mean, like every team,
every single team. Literally every team in top 8 had one.
Right, so no Liu Kang wants to play into the mirror, right? And like you look at they and you're like, so they might opt to go into the Sniper Joe matchup, which is what you wanted, right? And if they didn't, if they chose a good matchup for one of the other things, because Liu Kang typically didn't pick first because they had a winning matchup.
They could kind of pair into just about anything.
You were almost guaranteed to get the Sniper Joe into it every single time.
Very
so something
often.
like having the presence of mind to see that is I guarantee a massive factor in why you guys did so well. Not just
it definitely
because you guys are such incredible players, but also because of the way you structure your team and how you pair. So absolutely.
So like the closest comparison character-wise to what Sniper Joe was doing at that point in time was Cassie Cage, right? Because she was running Shadow Inheritance too, and like the attack lineup is completely different. Often the symbol was completely different than what I was doing, but that was like a red flag matchup for a lot of Liu Kangs. It's like, well, I don't want to pair into the Shadow Inheritance deck because why would I do that, right? Versus with mine, that wasn't immediately obvious off the bat until like it was already too late. So yeah, it worked out. So again, having that, like, you don't have to have a curveball deck. And sometimes the format is just at a point where like you don't need to do it. I mean, what just won teams this past run? It was Gil, Tim Keefe, and Cassandra. Like those are like 3 of the 5 best characters in the format at that point.
Not Cassandra, it was Spike 1.
Was it Spike? Okay.
Yeah, it was Spike
Either
Monday.
way, yeah.
Still three nuts characters.
Still like
Yeah.
top tier characters.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, and there's no real curveballs there. I guess the Spike one is kind of a curveball, but that was Scott's, right?
Yeah. So
And
he was running like time stops.
Yeah, it was running his P shooter time stop thing. But that, like, he played that at nationals too. So if you were paying attention,
yeah, you know it was coming.
You kind of knew it was going to happen. But
yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So like again, you don't have to do that curveball strategy, and we don't always do it. But sometimes it's like, again, I went undefeated with Tournelouse 3 teams the tournament before this past Worlds, and a lot of that was just because like. It's like, oh, I don't know what the hell this character does. Like, I've never played against him before. There's like 2 people playing him, and it's at this whole tournament. And what is he going to be doing? And oh God, I have to read Call of the Dreamlands. It's like, if you have to pick that card up and read it, you're probably going to not win that matchup.
Yeah.
But yeah, so some of it's that. It's just that little extra mental tax on the opposing team when they're in the pairing process, and even during the gameplay process too, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and deck flexibility is huge for our team.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk a little bit about your final match, the 5 billion year long match.
Because it was 4.5 hour marathon.
that I had to wait for to play my top 16 match. But I learned so much watching that match firsthand. And I was on your side of the table, so I only saw your cards, right? But you were holding cards that I was like, why do you keep this foundation, or like the 3 big things I remember like being impressioned on me was your use of silly foundations that I thought were stupid, like unpredictable movement, interactions like Sniper Joe and Stop, right? And then waiting for the right moment to strike, right? Like there was definitely a few turns where you just had like 6 attacks in hand, and you're like, I pass because Barrett
because they're not the right 6.
Yeah, it wasn't right at that point. Like you had to, even though you probably could have blown him the fuck out under the right circumstances, you still were like, I'm in a place where I'm not going to lose, and this is a timed round. So
why bother? I can dig into that. Like for those who don't have the context of like. Here's the 900-foot overview of what happened in those 2 series. Is game 1, I win the die roll. Game took an hour and a half. Game 2, he gets to go first. He blows me out in 2 turns. Game 3 took like 2 hours or something ridiculous. I don't even know.
Right.
But it was very much like super tiny margins of error. For both of us, not just for me, for Barrett too. Like if either one of us extended even a hair too far, we were just opening ourselves up to abuse, frankly. And he, like our game 1, it was like turn 5 by the time either one of us drew first blood and actually caused some vitality loss to the other person. And I wish I had the recordings of these matches because I'd love to go back and replay them. I think Rochester recorded them and something happened to the recording and they got lost, which is a total bummer.
That sucks.
Yeah. But the like key pieces of that matchup were me not letting myself get into a position where I would get blown out by his shadow inheritances. And as long as I could kind of mitigate that, I just kind of had to weather the storm on just about everything else. There were instances where I was like, well, I just kind of have to let him draw 4 cards off of Akimbo here. And just I've got a handful of blocks and hopefully it's enough. And we're just going to have to kind of work our way through it. Like that's a game I would really love to go back and like talk through play by play, like why I made particular decisions and so on and so forth. But I don't have the videos. So yeah. But really the big keys in that matchup were pretty early on in game 1 after we both jockeyed back and forth for positioning. And that was really more of it than anything. Like we poked at each other a couple times and the other person would like full block, and that went back and forth like a bunch. Neither one of us were willing to risk like reversaling into the other player, just because you're just opening yourself up.
Right. Yeah.
So we both played like super conservative and super tight through game one. And as like I saw more and more of his deck, I realized like this guy doesn't run any deadlock at all.
It's an all deck.
And at that time, like all his deadlock options were like on weird attacks, and there just wasn't really that much of it, right? Mm-hmm. So I realized like, okay, I can just maintain like a really strong defensive position once I'm out of that immediate like turn 2 get blown out by double Shadow Inheritance range. And as long as I continue doing that and continue building advantage on him and building advantage on him and building advantage on him through my board, like eventually I'm going to draw a hand of six or seven attacks that he's just not going to be able to deal with. And he's going to get into a point where he's forced to push in on me because he's a good player and he recognizes what's happening.
Right.
And he's going to realize like my window is about to close. And that's exactly how game 1 and game 3 went. I got to very strong defensive positions where I kept like a very conservative amount of cards in hand. Like it would be like build 1 pass type turns, that kind of thing, or play 1 attack, blow something up to made for speed or whatever, and bring in a stronger defensive foundation, that kind of thing. And once I got like a 1 with nature down and protected, then like, okay, cool. Like I'm set up to kill him. I just need to survive his push. Make sure I don't like make a mistake during that, and I should be fine. Right. Harrowing because any like it like that's not like an auto win matchup for Sniper Joe by any stretch of the imagination. Like
no, 19 health is extremely easy for Dave against.
Yeah, exactly. Like Shadow Inheritance, especially in bulk, would just make it to the point where like, well, he can kind of kill me with anything if it gets through. So I just have to play like airtight defense. And
well, I'll point out that Cassie Cage was kind of the inverse of why of the way I described the format earlier, right? Where there were string decks. Cassie Cage is a dunk deck, you know.
She can be, yeah.
You know, if she wants to dunk you, she's going to dunk you, you know.
Yeah, and Barrett's build could definitely do that for sure.
I mean, that's why I had such a poor time into it. Is that my piddly -4 damage to his.
It's like, okay, cool. I'm still hitting you for 12. Like,
it's coming in
I
for
don't
15,
care.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't think it was a situation where it's like, oh, I also have Shadow Inheritances, right? It was you playing the matchup very, very well, and you still lost game 2, getting blown.
Oh, I got demolished game. Like I blinked and I lost game 2. There was like there was nothing I could do.
That was pretty much what happened to me against Svoboda at Worlds last year. Game 1, you were in the Joliseum at the time as well. My game 1, everybody else had finished by the time we finished our game 1. And then 2 and 3, you know, two he blew me out, and the third game it lasted about another hour, and he did end up getting me.
He found a way to get there.
Yeah. But it's the same sort of thing, right? Like if she gets Shadow Inheritances out, like Svoboda got 3 out.
Terrifying. Yeah.
Games 2 and 3 on turn 2, he had 3, and I was like, this is awesome. This is so terrible.
You're in for a bad time.
Yeah.
One of the things, and this is more just like a general gameplay thing, that I ran into in the middle of that matchup is like our decks ran a lot of similar cards. He was obviously running Sensimorals just like I was. And there was a particular, like, I think it was game 3. Yeah, my final push on game 3, I ripped triple missile launcher, right?
Yeah.
Or I wound up with triple missile launcher in my hand.
I think you drew into it. I
think I started with 2 and I wound up with another one off of like some sort of card draw. I don't remember exactly how I got there, but anyway, so I had to like play around. He had a couple really strong uniques plus his Shadow Inheritances on the board. So I couldn't stun him. And because if I did, and he stuns his Shadow Inheritances, or he stuns his like
it's there the whole turn, right?
Yeah, then I have to deal with that on every single attack. So it was this kind of interesting, like, I'm just going to make you block 6 damage at a time. I'm just going to juice the speed on my missile launchers and on everything that I can, and I'm going to plink you down until you have tapped all of this stuff naturally, and then I can stun you, right? Like when it's 2 cards I don't care about anymore, because you're in a more desperate situation, then I can push harder with like the back end of my chain. And that's how it wound up shaking out. Like he had a Deliverance in his hand on that final kill shot that I had to play around, and I knew he had it because he'd been holding it the entire game.
Right.
And like there was like that again. I wish I had the videos of that.
Me too.
Because it's just such a good, like, I want to use that series as a teaching tool, but I don't have the videos because it's like, yeah, this is how you play really good UFS on both ends of the table, right? Barrett didn't make any mistakes. Like, and that was the thing that kind of made that matchup so much fun. Like I blinked and 4.5 hours went by. Like I don't like, it didn't feel like that set lasted as long as it did because I like both him and I were just locked in.
Right.
Yeah, that's some of the most fun UFS I've ever played. So
and you get
really
the
cool.
you get the street cred of taking down the guy who won the event. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
think
it didn't hurt.
that must feel good, right?
Yeah, it never feels bad. So it was nice to get a win for the team there too. So
yeah. Oh, of course, yeah. That's definitely the bigger win. Is we got our green card.
Yeah, got some more cardboard. It's always nice. So, yeah, man.
So
do we want to switch into like what's going on currently in UFS? I don't know. I've talked this 2-year-old deck to death at this point. So.
Well, so you're on Tournelouse right now, right? Is there anything that you see changing that trajectory right now?
Yeah, I can definitely see some stuff changing it. One of the bigger strengths of Tournelouse that's not slept on because it's in his support. Netherstorm just makes him really, really good.
Oh yeah.
And it's more the static on that card than anything it's doing on its own. Just the like, cool, I just get to ignore, jamming +4 damage on everything for the rest of my turn for as many, dogs as I have stacked or Tournelouse as I have stacked or whatever.
Oh yeah.
But there's more counters to that card coming out, right? There's a couple foundations in the DLC support that lets you like flip it after it resolves. There's a few other things. So like I've already kind of changed the deck around to compensate for that a little bit. I've just gotten more aggressive on like pinpoint foundation removal and that kind of thing. And I think he's still really good. But like, and obviously like making Allurophobia into a throw is kind of dumb.
It's
pretty good. I ironically, like I did some testing matches with the deck kind of before coronavirus shut local UFS down for the immediate future.
Right.
I slotted 3 of that foundation Moment Arrest, in the deck, and over the course of 6 games never drew it. So I have no idea how it actually performs on the table. But I just eyeballing it, like, the card's nuts for that character.
I mean, some of the time you don't even need to make it a throw because if you try Allurophobia
exactly.
plus 2 Dreamlands, it's like, well, okay, you're dead.
Like, cool. I just dunk you for 20 some odd and you just die. Yeah. Like, and that's the big strength of that character. Like, I like playing that dude a lot. Is he the best character in the format? No, but like, does he have some really bad matchups? Yes, he does. Like, I'll circle back to Sniper Joe really fast. If you want to talk about bad matchups, like the matchup into Fae for that deck is awful. Because the static applies constantly, so Fae just gets the tutor for whatever she wants all the time.
Whatever, yeah.
And I'm like, well, we got to pair around that, guys, because that is an O10. Like, but yeah, like Tournelouse definitely has some bad matchups. He's not the most flexible character on the planet, but I've had a blast playing him. Like being able to play a 56 card deck that can be aggressive and can still like really, really threaten late game string kills really well too. He's just been a really fun character to play.
I've been trying. It's been on my back burner for a little while because Noob came out and like I've been trying to break Noob, but I had like with Moment of Rest you can make a lot of Earth cards really great, and I think Earth is totally unexplored. I would agree with that. But I think that it would be like Earth in general is kind of a turnoff to me because it's so like milquetoast. But like things like I like Siegfried I like the Earth flip, the controlling aspect of Earth, and not so much the really general good stuff that it has at the moment, and that's what's really good. But I think Tournelouse, he flips your entire staging area with very little investment. I've been trying to think of like the right lineup that would make that work. So I'll have to pick your brain about it.
I think there's an Earth Tournelouse build out there somewhere that's probably pretty good. Like Asteros throws in him, turning them gauge is probably pretty fine.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the biggest drawback to honestly any build but the evil build is your Call of the Dreamlands just get really clunky. If you even want to play it off symbol in those other characters.
I think you would opt not to play it. And evil definitely has the better, like the Suzaku stuff is too good for Tournelouse.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the Suzaku Foundations, because most of them, except for a Whistle, are kind of like, they're okay.
Yeah, or whatever.
But a couple of the attacks are just like bonkers.
Yeah.
Like a 5 mid 9 throw that you can tutor out characters, stack them for free if you have momentum, that also clears itself, is like
still gauges.
And it's gauge and it has safe. Like that card's ridiculous. And then obviously, like there's some different philosophies on how to build Tournelouse, even off of evil, right? Like I like the Suzaku throw a lot, just because it's like, yep, this is pressure. Like you just have to deal with this card. And it's a 7 damage for literally 0 investment, 4 difficulty throw that gauges.
Yeah, it's always on.
Which is really good. And Prism Storm is just hysterical. It has a +1 low on it, so that's why it's in the deck.
Well, and sometimes you just get to the place where
you definitely get to live the dream a couple times.
Yeah, and it's so much fun. And Tournelouse can get there because you have all the things clearing your card pool, and you're drawing, to be able to fuel to get to 7. So I mean, you've
got some really good tools in that character, and they're tools that like nobody else in the format can really use, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, that helps for buying singles.
Absolutely, man.
LegendaryWolfGames.com.
Yeah. I have had to make a very minimal singles investment in that deck, which is great.
Because nobody else uses those cards.
No. You could get Nether Storms for like $3 at one point. It was awesome. So
yeah, I had mine stolen locally, which
that sucks.
I won't say stolen. The guy borrowed it and he never came back.
Okay.
I sent him a text message a few times and he was like, yeah.
Yeah, coronavirus. It's like, dude, that was 6 months ago. Like, come on. Man, that's rough though.
So do you have any eyes? Like Shiva just came out yesterday. Do you have any eyes on any of these new DLC characters?
I think a bunch of them are really good, honestly. Like again, I'm more slanted towards like the 7-hand size end of things, just because I value that extra card in hand and that kind of inherent flexibility there a lot.
A billion 7-hand these DLCs. Like I think somebody did the math. It's like 60 or 70% 7-hand.
There's a good bit of them. I think Raphael is probably the best of them, honestly. That character is really, really, really strong.
Yeah, he's crazy.
Just like I think if you want something to look at going forward that is going to be an archetype that you're just going to have to like have a game plan for, that evil, like horrible check, draw your entire deck archetype was run at Worlds with like the Dark One and Shinnok. And there's a couple other characters that can do it, and Raphael can absolutely do it. Like, because he just says, cool, I'm just going to keep playing Let's Parties until I run out of Foundations to flip over, and then play something else, and then play that until I run out of Foundations to flip over. Or I'm going to draw like 1 million cards with Hellfire and then just play 4 of them. Like, so there's a bunch of characters that can run that suite, kind of. And Raphael's definitely one of them.
That's probably the problem with Hellfire, is that you could have a 59 card deck with a different character on top of it, and it doesn't change that much.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's literally what we did. We took our Ben locally here took whatever the Dark One deck. I don't remember the player's name. Whoever the Dark One player that made top 16 at Worlds slapped a Raphael on top of it, and the deck worked just fine.
Yeah, I'm playing Janet in the Legendary Wolf Games online tournament right now.
Yeah.
it's basically the same thing. I just have it Princess Parries because Janet, you know.
Because why not? Yeah.
But
Just to make it that much more annoying.
yeah.
No, I think that's pretty good. So like that archetype is something to keep an eye out. Like I have a hard time playing decks like that just because like that's so many terrible checks, and I know they're just going to bite me at the worst possible time, and I just hate feeling like that when I'm playing.
So if I could make a recommendation, I'll send you this Janet list because
Okay.
the benefit to it is that defensively you get to see what card you're about to check.
That's true.
You're almost never surprised by it. And you always have momentum for covert intent. So there are oftentimes where I'll play like if I drew like 5 foundations in attack, and I'm just like foundation, copy Samba, and then
why not?
Covert intent, clear my card pool, draw 6 cards, you know, and then now I can attack you, Hellfire Payment, covert intent, do it again. So I'll definitely send you this list if you want to give this like a guy because it works out. And Hellfire with True Identity and that Scorpion Foundation that picks up the top card of discard pile if it's Desperation or Fury.
Oh yeah. I don't remember the name of it offhand, but that's
crazy. If you Hellfire mill 10, there's gonna be a Fury card there, right?
Right, and you get to stack it however you want, basically. So
because that's how the game works. Yeah, it's gross. And then ready it again afterwards. It's so gross.
Because reasons.
Yeah, it's super dumb.
Yeah, that card's gonna be a problem, honestly. Like
I wouldn't be surprised if it gets banned. Like it's zero surprise.
It's not like first on my list of like stuff that is going to be format defining for a while, but it's up there. Like
so the downside to it is the inconsistency of checking 28.
Just checking horrible.
Just horrible all the time. But I think the one boon it does have is that it is so much fun to see go off. Right?
Oh, it's hilarious.
Like even being on the other side of the table, I'm just like.
Yeah, dude, you just drew 30 cards and played all of the best ones. Like, you got me. I don't know what to say to that. Yeah. But and like tradition, like you've been playing UFS for a pretty good bit. I've been playing for a long time. And like anytime you get a situation like that where one card can draw you like 5 cards sometimes, it usually becomes a problem. Like we saw the same thing with Scorch Wheel. We saw like I can give like a million more examples. Scorch Wheels is just the most recent one I can think of off the top of my head. But like, like that card's really dumb. And it's only going to get dumber as more like quality bad checks.
Which they keep pumping into the DLCs too, because from a design standpoint, I get it because you want to, since these characters are only getting 1 attack, you want to pack them with something huge. Right. And that's a hell of a card. Like Hellfire is ridiculous. Right. So I don't know. But okay, man.
I think there's as like broader format picture other than that, which is just like hilarious weird meme decks that like once it runs into something that like has answers for it and has practiced against it and can play airtight defense against it, and then it falls apart and doesn't have a plan B, because those decks are all in on their plan A.
Oh, like, I said this when I talked to, I think it was Keenan I talked to us about, there's a lot of answers to it. Like Revoke takes a dump at it, securing his destiny. Everybody should be playing Venomous, dude. Like, it's
a really good card right now.
Playable while committed and says no to draw. And you don't have to worry about Shinnok anymore, right? So you can actually cancel the draw. And a lot of like the problem with playing the dark one with it is how he's actually a 6-hand size aggro character when he doesn't draw Hellfire Impalement. And dealing 32 is not hard in this format, right?
No.
And since those characters are going to draw or check horribly on defense, they have 0 defense, right?
Yeah, most of their foundations are spam. So like their quality defensive tools just don't really exist in the stage. Like they're combo decks, right? Like you combo off or you don't. Mm-hmm. And we'll see how they perform going forward. I'm excited to see it because again, I think the archetype is hilarious, but it's also like there's one perspective on sitting on the other end of the table and saying like, oh man, like this dude just threw 30 cards on me and killed me. I'm like, and on my end of it, I'm like, that shouldn't happen. Like there should not be a UFS line of play where like I drew my entire deck in one turn and just played every best attack I had. Is like,
that's why Liu Kang got banned. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. We'll see what they do with it. Like again, I'm not calling for a banning or anything like that. It's way too early to make that kind of call. But like, Yeah, Hellfire's just a dumb card.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be
No,
surprised.
I wouldn't be shocked at all.
Yeah, I'll put one last pin in it is that like fire decks can do it because of the quality of their spam.
Sure.
And they just do stuff, right? And then evil can do it because of how consistently they can build for even while checking bad, right? You can play Revoke, Fallen Angels, and X copies of other spam cards, and you're just going to be able to make the check to play Hellfire, even if you check a 1 on the next turn.
Sure, exactly.
So it has two symbols that are very good at checking poorly,
doing what it does.
You know. So that's what I would keep an eye on. Is if it had like something like water or something like that. If the bad check ratio was terrible, I wouldn't be worried about it particularly. Like nobody's worried about air on that, right?
No,
I think it's the
it's really the combination of like Let's Party, Hellgate, or Hellfire, or whatever, and whatever the action is to let you clear your card pool, like
covered in 10.
Yeah. There's just a lot of silly shenanigans going on that just kind of congealed into like, oh, like this got real dumb real fast because I played this card and I get to re-ready my entire staging area for some reason. Like, all right.
It's easy to arrive at a heavy breathing, like state of gameplay where you're just oh yeah, this is awesome.
I can do anything I want. Let's go. Like, for sure. I think but like beyond that, I think the format's in a pretty good place. Like, there's like obviously the Shield Big Bang ban needed to happen. Like that was a no-brainer. The rest of the bans I'm perfectly happy with. Like I don't have super strong opinions on whether Shinnok should have been banned or not. I don't think that character should have been printed in the first place just because he's kind of a design headache.
Yeah.
But I'm fine that he's gone. And like Quan, I love the shenanigans that Quan could get up to, but I also recognize that like when you're literally just picking characters up, discarding their entire support and saying, well, this is kind of a busted 5-hander that I can just jam in this 7-hander and he's just better because you're a 7-hander. Like, all right.
Yeah, I remember when Tim came up to me in like the 5th round at the Davey PTC when I was playing Shane, and I removed Samina, and he was like, oh. And I saw the like light go out of his eyes a little bit. That's why there's no Samina at this event,
right? Because Quan's at the event, so why would you play Samina when you can just play a 7-hand size Samina that you can use twice a turn sometimes?
So I get it. I mean, I liked Quan for completely separate reasons, just because he's such a meme, right?
Oh, he's the ultimate meme enabler. Yeah, for sure.
You and I had this long conversation about how I could improve my my fundamentals of play, and I took that and I practiced it, and I was like, "Fuck all that! I'm gonna play Punchy for the next 8 months." Right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's completely fair.
But yeah, I will admit that he deserved the ban. I was planning on taking Takeda to the event, and then I had a dream about playing Life Quan, and I was like, let's just do it,
Some days the cards speak to you, man. That's it.
They just some days they do. So I'm fine. And like Cassandra's still fine even without Shield Big Bang.
Cassandra's still really good.
She's still nuts. I think that you can take the Gil package and put it on Ivy, and you're still, it's fair now, more fair at least,
I guess,
And what else got banned? It was Shield Big Bang, Shinnok, Jeddah. Oh, fuck Jeddah. Sorry, I really hated that character.
No, I know. Like we had enough Jeddah running around locally that like we all kind of learned to play around him.
Yeah, I don't think it was hard to beat Jeddah either.
No.
It was just such a slog, man. And you could just lose because he drew too many orange cards, like he at Nationals did. Yeah.
My favorite counter to Jeddah is cats you for 48. After you force me to feed me a bunch of them. It's cool. I run a powerful too. Like you're gonna die.
I really loved playing Janet into it locally. Because
that's hilarious. That's a long match.
Yeah, he gives you momentum. You're like, thank you very much.
That is a long match. Yeah. But no. Again, I'm not super upset about him going. Like if you want to run most of his kit, like. You can play Tira. There's a couple other characters you can play that can still kind of make
his package is fine. It was just the character, the character with too much stuff that discarded that one momentum he had, so he could keep enhancing. So,
he just did a little bit too much. So.
Yeah. But all right, man. Well, thank you very much for coming on. Do you wanna give a shout out to anybody?
Sure. I'll give a shout out to everybody who's stuck inside during this pandemic that we're
Oh
living through
yeah,
right now, and
100%.
still making content and talking about our ridiculous card game. So it's nice. Like legitimately though, it's nice to have like distractions and some sense of normalcy and some stuff to get excited about looking forward. So thanks for doing this, man. Like this was a lot of fun. So
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I've been this has been in the back of my mind for a long time now. Like I had the message I sent to you, I actually typed up like 2 months ago.
Been sitting on that one for a hot minute. That's awesome.
Yeah. You were the first person I thought of.
Okay. Well, then thank you, man. That's very flattering.
No, and really it's because I think that like I really love UFS. I really love the people who play UFS, and I want everybody to get better. I want to get better. It's not just sure. A total. I would like cardboard, please.
Of course. Yeah. That's why we do what we do as far as like competitive end of this game goes.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. I got to give my shout out to Legendary Wolf Games, who's my sponsor. Go buy their singles. They're doing online tournaments now, which is cool. I'm super doing cool. It. And I lost.
I'm gonna try and hop in on the next one. So
do it, man. Do it. It'll be fun. Yeah. I'll sign up for it too. But go check them out for singles and online tournaments during your quarantine. And a shout out to my lovely girlfriend who's taking a nap behind me right now.
I think mine is too, actually.
I dig your Legos, by the way.
Yeah, those are all hers. She's got this crazy ass Lego town. There are more of them throughout the apartment, but
it's
the webcam
sweet.
Only shows so much. Yeah,
that's
it's pretty
awesome.
Sweet. So, all right, dude. Well, thanks for having me on. Shout outs to the Atlanta Play Group. Shout outs to Miles for teaming with me and Ben this year. Sorry, I couldn't fit in the backpack. Hopefully, I love seeing this content. Keep it going, man.